Alright guys, well, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go ahead and pack these wheel bearings, and I'm going to try to get the wheel hubs back on there. Last time I left off with you guys, there's an old hub. I think I was talking about with these guys. What I did is I cleaned the edge of this and I painted it with some cast iron gray, so that way hopefully this doesn't rust. If it does, it's not as noticeable. But I had some paper shoved in here so I didn't get the races. The new hubs I got came with new races. Ideally, you should replace the bearings when you do this. That would be the most ideal thing to do and the preferred thing to do. I cleaned my bearings, I inspected them, I feel my bearings are satisfactory to reuse. But in the ideal world, if you're doing it for somebody else, such or such, you guys should probably put new bearings in. But personally, I feel my bearings are suitable for use again. In a home world, that should be good. This car, I don't think will really be driven daily. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay out a clean piece of paper. And I'm going to take my clean bearings and I'm going to set them out so that way I can pack them and I can set them down on something that's clean. And I'll also clean one of my brake banjos because I'd accidentally taken it with me. But as you can see, my bearings seem to be in good shape. They feel nice and smooth. There's no black spots on the bearings, no rust in the bearings, and they seem to be smooth, so I'm going to reuse them. And they seem to be good quality bearings, or nothing that seems to be that bad. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to go through and clean them. Made in USA. They're probably the original bearings to the car, would be my guess. The other thing you want to do too is, generally speaking, when you guys do bearings, you want to keep this bearing with whatever race it came out with, because the bearings and the races, sometimes people say that the bearing is grooved to that particular race. In this case, I'm not terribly worried because I'm putting new races in. But as you can see, I cleaned everything. I got my spacers, my nut. And the other thing to do is probably put new seals in. To me, these seals look like they're still usable, so I'm going to reuse mine. But I would suggest, if you're doing this at home, put new bearings, put new races in, do all this stuff so you don't have to take it apart again. That's what I would say for most people to do. But for me, I'm going to honestly reuse them. So that's up to you guys on what you want to do. What I'm going to show today is hand packing the bearings. And with that, what I suggest to do is to have some gloves. So that way you don't get the grease on your hands. Getting grease and such on your hands is not a good thing. Your skin absorbs it, etc., etc., etc. You can look it up online. There's numerous reasons. So I would wear gloves. I have some gloves. I'm going to wear my gloves when I'm doing this. So, yeah, I made some lead bars the other day. I made videos, but then I screwed up editing them and accidentally deleted them. So that's something I'm going to show later on. So I got playing around with lead. So just taking some old lead stuff that I had sitting around and melted it down into bars and made a couple of sinkers. So that way I could try. I was curious how I got a little lead thing somewhere I bought. I don't know where I got it stuck to right now, but it's like a little, I don't know, pan. Really cool, actually. It's enough to make probably about 1 ingot or so. So, but that's another day. Alright guys, I'm going to set this up, get everything ready, and show you guys how I hand pack the bearings. Alright guys, now, like I said, first things first, put your gloves on. Some of you really don't see me wear too much. Oops. Sorry about that. I don't really wear gloves too much because I hate wearing gloves while trying to take nuts off, cotter pins out, because you always rip them, tear them, destroy them. So now you get to see me talk with my hands. Anyway, okay, let's get back on topic here. We're going to pack some bearings by hand. First things what you got to do is you got to take your grease gun. Make sure the end of your grease gun is clean. This one is dirty, so take a rag and you got to wipe it, make sure it's clean. Grease attracts dirt. So I always clean the tip of my grease gun, even if it's been sitting in my shop, because it always collects dirt and all that. So now that's clean. So now what you do is you take your grease gun, you pump some grease into your palm. I'm just using a red bearing grease I had. There are so many different bearing greases you can get. At work, I use Aeroshell number 5 for bearings. At home, I just have this red grease. If you guys don't have a grease gun, I went on Amazon. I got this. It's like a pistol grip grease gun. It works pretty good. It was like, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks, I think. So you can buy that. You can probably even buy the grease off Amazon if you look, I bet. So now you take the grease, you pack some in, put some in your hand, as you can see, and you take a bearing and you look at the bearing and you can see how it's tapered. So you take the side that's bigger, which is this side here, and you take it and you go like that, and you keep working it in there like so until you get the grease starting. Oops, there we go. So you get the grease starting to come out, then you can just kind of work it around until you keep getting that the whole way. And just keep doing that until you get the grease coming through. And you just keep packing it, packing it, packing it, packing it until you get it coming through. See how it's coming through all through there? And you just keep working it around and keep doing that. And you just keep doing that. And the other thing is, I hate sometimes the smell of bearing grease. It's just not a big fan of it. So, you know, true bearing grease kind of smells, it's got a unique smell to it, and I hate my hands to smell that way. So you just keep packing it until you get it coming through the whole bearing. Might have to put more grease in your hand to get it to come through. If you do, then you just go pick up your grease gun. You can set your bearing down in your clean paper. Pick up your grease gun and just squirt some more in there. This is where I like the pistol grip grease gun, because all I got to do is pick it up like so, and I can squeeze it and pump. I don't have to try to hold it against my leg or my pants or the table or anything like that. It just makes it easier for me, I think, when I grease the bearings and do stuff with a pistol grip one. But you just keep packing it until you get it coming through the whole bearing. So you don't have to worry about trying to keep the bearing really clean, but you don't want to have that either, because that's, you know, it's wasteful. So you can take your finger, push it back through, wipe it back on your hand, and just rub it around the bearing. Make sure you got it coated good in grease. Wipe off the extra, put it in your hand for when you do your next bearing. So you go through and just keep packing your bearings like that to get them greased up. Just keep working them. So I'm going to cut this video off here because I don't think you guys want to see me pack all my wheel bearings by hand. It's all the same for the bigger bearings and the smaller bearings. So you just keep rotating them around in your palm until you get them full of grease like so. So you're just taking the bearing, scraping it against your hand, scraping up the grease into it. So well guys, on an unrelated note, the other issue I've been having with this car is I couldn't get the lock cylinder to turn. So yeah, I just packed these wheel bearings, and I want to take a minute and look at my lock cylinder. I had the column bout pulled apart the other day. I didn't film it. I'm sorry about that, guys. So I will post up some of that later. But since I had the column pulled apart, I pulled it apart so I could back the car in here because the steering wheel was locked. And I wanted to be able to back the car in my garage, and I couldn't do it with the turned wheel. I did get, you know, keys and everything from the guy that I bought it, or actually the woman I bought it from. But that's what she didn't tell me, that sometimes. Now, as I was saying before, my camera decided to rudely cut me off. The lock cylinder's been having issues. So you can't completely turn it. You can push it in, and you can bring it to there and stop. You can go to the accessory, but you can't turn it to the ignition side. So when I was up in Chrysler Nationals for Corvettes, I was talking to this guy. I seen this lock cylinder, and it's a GM lock cylinder. I got talking to the guy, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, it's for Corvette." I was like, "I don't know." But anyway, I said, "Well, if it is, it should be the same And most likely they use the same lock cylinders in the years. So I picked this up from the guy, and as you can see, this one turns like it should. Not a problem. Put it back there. Pull the key out. It doesn't turn. Put the key in, and it turns effortlessly. So I gave the guy, I don't know, $10 maybe, or $15, but it looks like it's a brand new lock cylinder. I don't think it's ever been used. But when you compare them, they look exactly the same. There we go. They look exactly the same. So I'm thinking this one should work as a replacement. So I'm going to put this one in, and that way at least I have a ignition cylinder that will work and operate as it should. So it could be something caught up in here, because see how this pops up and it goes down. When you bring it back, it goes up. This one sometimes does that. It's back where it should be. You pull a key out, it doesn't go down. You can push it down. It just, something's bound up in it. So I might see how you can take it apart. I don't know. I'll have to look at it and see. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. I don't know. I don't know what this little clippy does. It doesn't matter. It's broken. I'll look at that later. It's something I'll sit down when I can have some free time and screw with, see if I can get the original lock cylinder working. But at least now I got a GM lock cylinder. See, it even says for GM cars on it. So, but I got a lock cylinder that seems like it's going to work. So I'm going to stick that in the car real quick and try it and see if I can at least have a ignition cylinder now that works properly. Because when I moved the car into the garage, I jumpered the distributor and took the lock out of the column. So that way I can move it. So, but I'll show you guys a little bit about that in a few. Alright, what you got to do now is you take the wheel bearing. I'll move this one so you can see. You take the wheel bearing, the bigger wheel bearing, you got to put it in the wheel, and you got to take your seal and put your seal in. Now, of course, the bearing will be flipped. So you don't want to get grease on it, because now I got to clean that. But you'll put it in there like that. I put this one together already. I didn't think about recording, so I'm doing a quick thing. And you take you push it in, set it in there, and then what you might have to do is take a hammer and a punch, and then just work around the outside of the seal, getting it in, and you're done. You're gonna have to use a little bit more force than what I showed there, but it shouldn't be too much, just some light taps. A punch is ideal. What I have here is an old starter bolt from a Chevy 6.5 diesel. So it worked. I just had it laying up here. I didn't feel like going to get in a punch. You just need something round that you can tap. Really, ideally, would be a brass drift, but I don't have any brass drifts here. So that will work, so you can get the bearing in. And then once you get that in, then you can take it. Of course, make sure you don't have any grease and grime on it. What would be good to do is to take some, like, brake clean, carburetor clean, and wipe down your disc before putting it on. That way, I'm looking to see if I have any brake clean right here in reach. I don't have any brake clean, but I got some carburetor clean, and that should work. So you want to spray down your disc and wipe it, so that way you can get all the grease that they put on there from assembly, not assembly, when they make it. They put grease on it so it doesn't get rusty in shipping. And you want to wipe it down to make sure you don't have any on the surface there. And make sure it's clean. And then you're going to take your wheel bearing and you can set it up there. I'm going to see if I can rotate this camera so maybe you guys can see from up here, maybe. Let me set this down so that way you guys can maybe watch me do this here. There we go. Hopefully I won't be blocking the camera. I'm going to try not to if I can help it. So we're going to see what we can do when putting this back on. I'm going to try to work over on the other side so I'm not blocking it. And it's not that hard to put this back on. Ideally, it would be good to put your rotor back on before you put your disc back on, so then you can get it all back together. So you're going to put your rotor, get your wheel bearing and seal in there. So it's nice to have something to kneel on. I got these nice foam pads I've picked up. So you're going to take that, you're going to slide it on there like so. And then you can grab your smaller wheel bearing, put that on there, and then you grab one of your washers, and you'll see on the washer, let me come over here and show you guys, there's a notch cut in it. There's a notch cut on that spindle, so you're going to put the notch in that spindle, then you can go ahead and put your nut on. Now with this nut here, I believe there is probably is a torque. I don't know what it is. I generally put them on till they're tight, and I can spin the rotor and see how good it is. When you spin it, actually, you can feel the, you spin it and the bearings kind of take not a set, but they work a little bit and they center themselves. So, you know, each time you spin it, I can feel that nut where I can tighten it up by hand a little bit. Each time I tighten it up a little bit. But you want to be able to spin it, at least, no matter however you put it on there. If you have it on to the point that you can't spin it with a finger, something's wrong. And if you need to get a big hammer or crowbar or pry bar to put the nut on, I don't think that's right. I've never had a wheel bearing that I've had to put it on that way. On aircraft, I generally, when doing them, you put them on tight, and like on the Sirius, when you tighten up the wheel bearings on them, you put them on, and I believe it's one rotation per manual is what, you know, one rotation, that's what it says in the manual on how to tighten the wheel bearing. So you want to make sure you can get it in there, and then you want to take a new cotter pin. It doesn't have to be a cadmium coated, it could be a stainless steel cotter pin. Whatever you do, you want to put a new cotter pin in it. Do not reuse an old cotter pin. I'm going to try to see if I'm in the cotter pin hole where I can drop, you know, the hole where the cotter pin goes through, where I can drop it in. If not, I might get a wrench and snug it up a little bit, so that way it will be tight. And before you put it on, it's always good to look and see where the cotter pin hole is, so then you're not sitting there trying to figure it out. There it is. It's right there. I backed it off a little bit so I can find the hole. So let's tighten it up. It doesn't align with that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a wrench and I'm going to snug it up so this next cancellation fits in there. Let's see if I can find a wrench. I honestly don't remember what size it is. So I'm going to see if one of my wrenches in my wrench set here might work. Actually, well, I don't know if it will. I got a 7/8 up here. Let me try that real quick. So 7/8 is too small. Let's go to 15. I think that's a 15/16. That's too small. So let's see if I can find my next wrench, which I probably put away in my toolbox. I think. Let's see if I got it. Maybe I got a socket now. I don't know what I did. Maybe that's the wrench. It ain't an inch. It's bigger than an inch. So, what you should do is go get a wrench. But I don't feel like getting a wrench. Just to snug this up to a cancellation here. It still spins freely. It is at that cancellation right there. It drops in. What I'm going to do is just snug it up a little bit more to see if I can show you guys what happens when you get it too tight. Let's go to the next one. Actually, it doesn't even want to go there. It doesn't really even want to spin, which I think is too tight. As you can see, I can back it off here. I can take a finger and it spins. That's how I would do it. And that's how I am going to do it. I don't know how other people want to do it, but you can do it however you feel is comfortable, whatever you feel is right. this is just how I do it. Then I'm going to take my pliers and make sure that cotter pin's set in there good. I'm going to take one end, bend one end up and over. I'm going to get a pair of cutters and cut that. Then I'm going to cut that one and bend it over. So let me find some cutters and I'll be right back with you guys. Alright guys, I've gone through, I've cut the cotter pin, I cut the bottom one and I bent it over under the nut. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your wheel cap and you're going to reinstall your cap. And your cap just kind of sits on there and you just kind of tap it on there. Sometimes they can be kind of fun to tap back into place. They just like to be a little bit difficult sometimes. And again, it's nice to have something that you could tap with, like a punch or something. Of course, as you can see, this one's wanting to rotate around and not go on. So you just got to kind of work them. See, now it's going on there. But that's what you got to do, is just kind of work them around and tap them on. The other thing I would suggest doing is, like what I did with this, is I also painted the cap just because I don't want it to rust. I cleaned it and painted it. So that's how you put new disc on there, wheel bearings, cap, etc., etc., etc. So, the other thing I did is I cut one of the brake lines and reinstalled that because I'm going to try to flush the lines out. I want to try to save the lines. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to do the same on the other side with the old brake line. I'm going to cut the end off and put a container under it, and I'm going to try to see if I can bleed some fluid through it and then blow the lines out. So